Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Pecan sour cream coffee cake. That's right, I'm going to show you how to make a cake specifically engineered to go with coffee. And when it comes to these kind of cakes, I think everyone agrees that the best part is that crumb filling / topping. And because of that fact, what we've done here is doubled, maybe even tripled, the amount of crumb mixture normally called for in these recipes. And the results really were amazing. In fact, I almost titled this recipe the ultimate pecan sour cream coffee cake. But I didn't, because really that's up to you to decide. But I really did love how this came out. So let's go ahead and get started with the first of 3 very simple components, the pecan crumb topping / filling. And for that, we're going to start with about 1.5 cups of chopped pecans. And then to our nuts, we're going to add some sugar in 2 forms. We'll do some light brown sugar, as well as some white sugar. We will also add a nice big spoon of cinnamon, as well as a pinch of salt. And then last but not least, we will drizzle in some melted butter. And then we'll take a spatula and mix all that together. And once that's been accomplished, our crumb topping / filling is done. And by the way, you want to do a very thorough job of combining this stuff. Okay, we want to make sure all these ingredients are completely and thoroughly coated with that melted butter. So take your time and give it a good mix until you have something that looks like this. At which point we can set that aside and move on to the dry ingredients. And that's going to start with some regular all-purpose flour, to which we're going to add some salt. And then we're also going to need some baking powder, as well as its good friend, baking soda. And at this point, if we were our grandparents, we would sift this, but we're not. So we'll take a whisk and use the modern method of simply mixing this for about a minute. And as soon as that's mixed up, we'll set that aside and move on to the last component, the wet ingredients. And ideally, that's supposed to begin with some malleable, room temperature butter. But I forgot to take mine out of the fridge. So I popped it in the microwave for a few seconds on defrost to kind of soften it up a little bit, which sort of worked. But I was worried about it melting, so I stopped and just decided to use it like this. So hopefully you'll remember to leave your butter out, because it does make this next step much easier. Because what we're going to do is dump in some sugar and use a spatula to cream it into that butter. And as you can see, if your butter's still a little too cold like mine is, it just makes it a little more difficult. But having said that, a little too firm is always better than a little too soft. And I'm assuming I'm not the first person that's ever said that. But anyway, we're going to continue working the sugar and butter together with our spatula until it's been smushed and smeared together and looks something like this. At which point we're going to stop and add 2 whole eggs, but not at once. All right, we want to add these one at a time, which is going to make it a lot easier to mix in. So we'll crack in an egg and we'll take a whisk and we will mix that in. And as you may know from previous recipes where we've done this, when you first start mixing the egg into the butter and sugar mixture, it doesn't look great. Okay, it's not going to look like it wants to mix, and will kind of look separated and like something went horribly wrong. But do not be concerned, just keep whisking. And as you'll see in just a few seconds, the mixture will come together into kind of a smooth, sticky mass. And once that happens, we can go ahead and add the second egg in, which always mixes in much easier than the first one. So we will add that second egg and we will mix it in. And as soon as that's done, we can go ahead and add the last couple wet ingredients, which includes some vanilla extract. Of course, the real stuff. Remember, real chefs never use fake vanilla. And then we'll finish this off with a cup of sour cream. And of course, you'll get extra credit if you use homemade creme fraiche for this, which I didn't, but it would be amazing. And then we'll go ahead and mix that up with our whisk. And once that's set, we'll go ahead and finish off this batter by whisking in our dry ingredients. So we will dump our flour mixture in. And this is by no means difficult. But one thing I want to point out, you see how when I'm stirring here, some of the flour flew out of the bowl? Try to mixture slower and more carefully so that doesn't happen. So that's just me rushing. Whoops, I did it again. And besides not losing flour, the other thing is we don't want to overmix this. So we're only going to stir that till the flour disappears and then we're going to stop. Okay, right there is perfect. And once that's been combined, we can move on to final assembly. And what that means is we're going to transfer exactly 1/2 of this batter into the bottom of a buttered baking dish. And we'll spread that out as even as we can. But to hedge our bets, when we're done, we'll give it the old tappa-tappa, as well as the old shaka-shaka to settle that batter down. At which point, we're going to stop and scatter over exactly 1/2 of our crumb mixture. Just try to distribute that as evenly as you can. And then what we want to do is just give it a very gentle pressing with our fingertips. Not too much. Just ever so slightly press that down with your fingertips. We don't want to press it flat or actually into the batter too much, but just settle that down a little bit. And once that's done, we'll go ahead and top that with the rest of the batter. And then what we'll attempt to do is spread this over without disrupting that layer of crumbs if we can help it. which is not easy because this stuff is very thick and very sticky, which is why right here I decided to switch from the spatula to this smaller, thinner spreader. And like I said, we're going to spread that over, disturbing that layer of crumbs as little as possible. But as you can see, some of those crumbs are going to mix into that top layer, which is not a problem. As you'll see, once this bakes, it looks amazing. But anyway, we'll spread over the rest of the batter, doing as little damage as possible, at which point we will finish this off by spreading over the rest of the crumb mixture. And by the way, some cooks, to make this easier, don't do a center layer of crumbs. They'll transfer in their batter and they'll just do one layer of crumbs on top. And while that may be a little easier, I much prefer the texture and the appearance of this method. But anyway, that's up to you. You are the Drake of your coffee cake. Speaking of which, we started from the bottom, now we're here. And we'll finish this process by ever so slightly pressing those crumbs into the surface. Not too hard, just a nice light pressing. And then other than cleaning off a little schmutz around the edge with a paper towel, this is ready to bake. So let's go ahead and transfer that into the center of a 350-degree oven for about 35 minutes or so, or until it looks like this. That top will have formed that signature crispy, crunchy surface. And how we're going to know for sure it's done is with a bamboo skewer. If we stick that in somewhere near the center, it should come out clean. You see that? Or if you pull that out and it still has sticky batter on it, it needs more time. And then assuming our cake is cooked long enough, we only have to do one more thing, which is by far the hardest part of this recipe. We want to let this cool down completely before we cut it and serve it, which I did. So this is a couple hours later. And right here, you're going to get your first look at why we took the trouble to do that center layer of crumbs. Because not only does that give this its signature appearance, but we're also going to get not one, but two distinctly different textures with that crumb mixture. Okay, the stuff on top gets kind of crispy and crunchy, while the stuff on the inside stays kind of moist and buttery. And for me, that's the magic of this cake. The combination of those two different textures of crumb, combined with that beautiful, tender, buttery, not too sweet cake. It was just incredible. And an absolutely amazing pairing with this make-believe coffee. So good. But anyway, that's it. Pecan sour cream coffee cake. Looks great, tastes great, and super easy to make. In fact, if you're one of these people that never has any luck making cakes, make this recipe. It is virtually impossible to screw up. And no, I don't believe in jinxes. Well, in sports, yes. But in cooking, no. So I really do hope you give this a try soon. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.